I'm Katie.
I'm Maddy.
And I'm Sophie.
And we are your hosts for today's segment of Book Talk.
Today we will be reviewing the book Patient HM, a story of memory, madness, and family secrets by Luke Dittrich. This book uses the story of Henry Molaison, or Patient HM as he is more commonly referred to initiate conversation about the complexity and fragility of the human brain structure. As a child, Henry experienced severe head trauma after being hit by a bicycle, resulting in repeating seizures throughout adolescence and young adulthood. In an attempt to treat these seizures, at age 27, Henry's medial temporal lobes in both brain hemispheres were removed by the author's grandfather, Dr. William Scoville. The surgery was partially successful in curing his seizures, but left a lasting negative impact on Henry's ability to form new memories. Henry and the scientists who were involved in his case, including Dittrich's grandfather, speak to a greater history of brain experimentation. There is a quote from Patient HM that we feel contributes to the overall message of the story. Neurosurgery, whatever the era, always requires at least two frightening qualities in its practitioners: the will to make forceful entry into another human's brain and the hubris to believe you can fix the problems inside. Sophie, what are your overall impressions of Henry's story, the book, and the message that is being conveyed?
Thanks, Maddy. I'm glad you asked. That's a really great quote you pulled. I think it summarizes the overall message of the story really well. The main message was that the brain is a very powerful and complex structure, yet it must be treated with great care and caution, something that was not taken into account during the mid-20th century. This book revolves around the history of neurosurgery and talks extensively about many of the first lobotomy procedures ever performed. In the early stages of neurosurgery, many procedures and treatments were administered that would be regarded as complete violations of both the law and basic human rights. This novel delves deeply into the obstruction of these rights by giving many examples of how surgeons, including the author's grandfather, operated on their patients. Although these surgeries did not abide by today's ethical standards, they offered many important insights into the brain and its many functions, and were a good starting point for our understanding of neurosurgery as a whole.
That's a great interpretation of the message of the book, Sophie. A very important quote from the book says that the landscape of brain research had changed in profound ways. While the therapeutic value of the lobotomy remained murky, its scientific potential was clear. Human beings were no longer off limits as test subjects in the brain lesioning experiments. This was a fundamental shift. By the middle of the 20th century, the breaking of human brains was intentional, premeditated, and clinical. This quote clearly states that the mid-1900s were a time of experimentation on human brains, and this book contains many anecdotes about these experiments. An example of these experiments was the introduction of the ice pick lobotomy done by psychiatrist Walter Freeman. Freeman was not a trained neurosurgeon, yet he completed over 2,400 lobotomies where he would just insert an ice pick through the eye socket and dig around in the frontal lobe to sever connections that he thought were the cause of mental illness. In these surgeries, the surgeon could not even see the area that they were lesioning, causing a complete lack of precision. This is just one example of how the beginning of neurosurgery was extremely unorganized and resulted in damaged patients such as HM.
Another example of these procedures mentioned in the book was electric shock treatment. At the Institute of Living, in what was called the therapy room, patients would be strapped down to a mattress and immobilized while they were administered electric shocks. One of the patients that received these treatments was Dittrich's grandmother. All of the patients who experienced this were extremely afraid of the treatments, so in order to eliminate this fear, the term electric shock was changed to electric sleep. These people that were being operated and experimented on were all asylum patients, for therefore the results of their operations, according to the neurosurgeon, could not be generalized to the rest of the population. This is the reason that Patient HM became so widely renowned in the world of science. Dr. Scoville did not see anything wrong with his brain, yet he removed his medial temporal lobes anyway. Because he did not have any mental illnesses like the asylum patients, the results of his surgery could be applied to the rest of the human population as well.
Wow, thanks, Maddy. That's a lot to think about. Personally, after reading this novel, I have a new perspective on the history of neurosurgery. A new science always starts out as trial and error, but with the brain and its relationship to the rest of the body and its functioning, the importance of succeeding is heightened to incredible degrees. I have a new appreciation for the knowledge our society holds now and for the steps that scientists and doctors have taken in order to allow us to reach this point in history. There's a lot more pressure on doctors to help with their patients without destroying their personality now than there was back at the start of neurosurgery, which deserves a lot of respect. In the future, I will be much more inclined to keep myself updated on scientific advancements, as well as those in underdeveloped countries, in order to see how improvements may be used to help those struggling a little more than ourselves. I personally really enjoyed this book. I would definitely rate it a 10 out of 10.
I completely agree. This book was full of horrifying yet captivating stories that illustrated how modern neurosurgery started out. I would definitely recommend this novel to others because I just could not put this book down. I wanted to keep reading. It was so engaging to read about patient HM and his journey from his horrible bike accident to the surgery that drastically altered his personality and lifestyle, as well as many other accounts of early experiments with neurosurgery. I would specifically recommend this book to anyone who's interested in psychology and the different functions of the brain, especially students who are interested in or want to pursue neurosurgery and understand the extensive history behind it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sophie and Katie. The three of us really enjoyed this book, and we think the rest of the world would too. From all of us here on the Psychology Channel, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to protect your brain.
Good luck!